Brígida Hernandez. She passed away. Yeah, that was where she went and met other folks.
Good morning and welcome to our October 8th Board of Supervisors meeting. Going to do something a little bit different this morning, and if I can't do this, I guess I'll get in trouble. Please stand up and just say hello to the people next to you. Shake hands and say, how's your morning going? Good morning, honey.
Great, good. Good morning. Very good. Especially
Something a little bit different.
Good.
Supervisor.
Good morning. I'm Megan.
Feel like I'm at church. Because,
We're gonna get a whole conversation started now. It's good.
It's a light meeting. It's a light meeting.
It is.
May I just copy my presentation?
Okay.
Copy my presentation on two.
And who says our board meetings have to be boring? We'll start off today with the Pledge of Allegiance by our Supervisor, Peter Hernandez from District 3.
Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Acknowledgement certificate of posting.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Presentations and recognitions. Have none. Public comment. This is the opportunity to address the board on items of interest not appearing on the agenda. No action may be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 5495 4.2. Do we have any public comment?
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing?
Good.
I really like that, Mark. That was a nice way to start the meeting, so I appreciate that. So I'm Sean Tenenbaum, the superintendent for the high school district here in town. This is Roseanne Lascano, our chief business officer. We wanted to take a few minutes this morning to thank the board for their leadership. I think the collaborative efforts that the board has shown, CAO Espinosa, has been tremendous for the high school district. We've been able to accomplish so much with those collaborative efforts for the safety of our students, for the accomplishment of building a road, temporary closing a road, moving forward with the first steps of a permanent closure for Nash Road, a future parking lot. And on behalf of the Samuel High School District and our 3,000 students, 300 employees, we're here to say thank you. Those efforts mean everything to us as we strive to have the safest environment possible for our staff and students. And then Roseanne and I would like to present a check to CAO Espinosa for the portion of our project, which is $394,000, which will help us, which is a nice check, Ray, which will help us move forward in our continuing efforts. And thank you very, very much.
Roseanne Lascano, I'm the Chief Business Officer, and I want to echo Dr. Tenenbaum's feelings about our gratefulness. The safety of our employees and students is utmost, and I just want to, I appreciate everything and want to thank you all so much.
Great, thank you.
And it was a pleasure working with your staff.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add, working on the committee with the Nash Road, when you stepped on board, Superintendent, we were able to get a lot done, and it just shows the personal touches that your contributions have made to the enhancement of not only the high school district, but the whole community, and personally, I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Supervisor.
CEO Ray Espinosa.
I also want to thank you and your team as well. We've had a lot of meetings, and we're working right now with the ad hoc committee on addressing the park and addressing safety for the park as well as the high school. So thank you for your time and energies put forth. And one thing for clarity, it's a county check, not going to Ray Espinosa.
I was going to ask that question.
Just a little clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Any other? See none, we'll go to department head announcements. We'll start off with CAO Ray Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have an announcement out of our OES department. I'd like to invite Chris Bengano up. She's our interim OES director.
Good morning. Chris Mangano, OES Interim Manager. Just wanted to give a brief update on the power outages that PG&E has been broadcasting for the last few days. I've been on conference calls 3 times a day that started Sunday night, and as of this morning at 7:30, San Benito County is not on the blueprint to be affected. So we should not have any power outages due to the PSPS. However, we are expecting wind, and as a result of wind, we do have natural causes natural threats, but it would not be shut off due to the fire dangers. So I'll continue with the conference calls that are with PG&E, Cal OES, National Weather Service, and those are 3 times a day, and I'll be on those to keep you all updated if there's any changes.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you staying on top of that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I had a question. Yeah, Chris, one of the questions I had was kind of what is the map of where all the locations are being affected? I own a business downtown, and we got the notification, and it's obviously concerning because we have freezers. So how can we get a little bit more, like, be a little bit more proactive to be able to prevent, or at least inform folks so that they could do what they can
Sure.
to address?
So in addition, PG&E does have a map on their general website, pge.com, and that is very current. They keep that up to date. But if there is to be a power outage due to the wildland fires, they would notify each individual customer. And that is in addition to notifying the county. So San Benito is not on it at this point. It's up north, mainly. Santa Clara County is affected, as well as Santa Cruz. And as of this morning, Kern County has been added to that. But San Benito is good. So if they gave us notice, we would push that information out through emails and social media and through a Nixle that we've already spoken to the police department about using. But we don't have to, we're clear for now.
Is there a lot of deciphering with that map? I mean, is it
It's pretty clear.
pretty clear? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, since we're on the kind of the subject and the concerns about potential devastating fires, in the state, and really we're concerned about San Diego County and having a district area in my district that is a high risk fire area recognized by CAL FIRE, and this is a concern that I hope next year that we could address. Maybe OES could work with RMA to get those areas mowed. This year we didn't get some of the areas in my district mowed. I don't think it's a good idea to do it now, of course, but I think we have to kind of reevaluate how we mow the county. And, I know we started in South County after the rainy season, and this year we had a late rainy season, and there's a lot of reasons why we didn't get to the western part of the county. But it's a concern to a lot of residents that, we had, tall grasses right on the side of the road, and some people are able to take care of it, some are not able to. And I'm hoping that we recognize this, not only PG&E is trying to prevent devastating fires, but maybe we need to kind of get on top of it a little bit more on our end to mow at least the high density residential areas.
I'll work with RMA on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Chair, if I may make a quick comment. For Supervisor Hernandez and other folks out there, if you go to, I actually posted it on our Facebook, on my campaign Facebook, Robert Rodriguez put it up. You can actually put in your address. So it specifically will tell you if your address is going to be affected. So there's no guesswork, about,
Awesome.
How the
Right,
maps are
that's on the
sometimes fuzzy.
pgne.com page. Is that-
You just click right on there. You'll see it on the Facebook deal we put out. But the other option is make sure for everybody in the community, go to PG&E. You can either call them 743-5000, 800, or you can go to their website and put in your personal information, and they will call, text, email you. It's important to have all that up to date because they're trying to give the most advanced notice as they possibly can.
Mr. Chair, is this going to be an ongoing situation that San Diego County is going to be getting these notices every year?
Probably. It's a new PG&E model that they're using.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's the right time, but maybe we need to think about what alternative energy is available for us in case of why relying on PG&E, and it could disrupt our operations.
Well, we can put that on a further agenda, but regardless whether it's PG&E or we use an alternative source,
Right.
PG&E is still,
Right.
they have all the infrastructure, so this would still be the case.
Well, what I mean is like maybe having generators at the key locations, like the sheriff department.
Or-
We
yeah,
do.
No, we do. We do here locally.
Maybe it's time, to make another presentation in the near future to see where we're at.
Yeah, Sheriff's Department has a generator. We have one here. They are spread throughout the county, and we have several portables.
So you're speaking of, even with winter
Yeah.
approaching,
Yes.
having a contingency plan in place so we know that there's a redundant system if, in case of a major, I hate to use the word, but catastrophe, or if
Right.
that, so can we work on that, maybe bring it back by the end of the year?
Sure.
Would that be possible?
Mr.
Yeah, we can do
Chair.
that. We'll make sure.
The last meeting in December?
Or early next year, it doesn't matter.
Let's try it
It's
early
for-
December because of the winter coming, if that's possible, because I know you're less one person, but I just wanted to make sure you
I
are able to achieve
appreciate
that.
Sure, not a problem.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one last, maybe to consider also is, because, coming back from RCRC, that's one of the topics they had was wildfires and the PSPS program. One of the issues with rural communities is not just because they're so far outside from infrastructure, but then there's concerns for sensitive populations. So I don't know if Chris can include what that would look like. The elderly folks that are on machines that have certain needs medically that require power. So there's a lot of different variables, and I think we should be very considerate of those populations also.
Okay. Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another announcement out of our RMA department. I'd like to invite up Harry Mavergenis, RMA Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce some new employees that we have and some promotions from within the system. I'm going to start. I'm just ask them to stand up as I call their name. Maria Aldape, my new secretary. She's a new employee here. Megan Stevens, staff specialist, is a promotion recently. Ariel Goodspeed, our new planner, and I didn't hire her just for her name, but great planner. Dwayne Dauphiny, which is a promotion to chief building official. He's been with us for some time as building inspector. And Kathy Smallwood, new employee, accounting technician. And then as a part-timer, you guys can sit down now. I want to introduce Rich Brown. He is a retiree from the sheriff's office. He is doing code enforcement for us 3 days a week, including Saturdays. So we're very pleased to have his services available. And then later on in the agenda, I'm going to be, one of the items involves a contract. Gary Lepori, who is our current building official, I'm recommending that he be promoted to assistant RMA director, and that'll be the topic of another report later. But I'm very pleased to do this. We've done about 11 recruitments. In addition to these folks, we have several, we're interviewing for road maintenance supervisors. We're waiting to post another position in that area. We have an accountant one position open, which we will be interviewing next week. We just closed engineering technician and engineer one. We'll be interviewing those shortly. And we are also interviewing for code enforcement and building and grounds worker. So we've been very active, and I thank the administration and the HR folks for their support in making a lot of those happen. So I came in, we had over 15 vacancies. We're working on getting a full department. And I thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's an outstanding group of hirees that you have. I'm very impressed, with the exception of Mr. Brown. I think he's too nice of a guy to be a code enforcer.
You have your address, sir.
Uh-oh. I'll drive you out there.
Touche.
Thank you, Harry.
I'd like to, this administration, like to go ahead and remove item number 3 from consent, Mr. Chair. We're going to be bringing this back. We have a correction on this particular item, so we have to work on that. We also, I wanted just to mention that I was fortunate enough to go and meet our assemblyman yesterday to discuss Highway 25 and the roundabout. Harry Mavergenis and 2 board members, Supervisor Gilio, Supervisor Botello, were there present and advocating to address the expansion of 25 as well as addressing the roundabout concerns that the community has. So I'm sure the two will probably elaborate further on that, but I wanted to make sure that the chair and the public knew that we're working on that. With that, I think that's all the announcements we have, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Bring it back to the board here. We'll go on to the board announcements, informational only. We'll start off with Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We attended this RCRC meeting. Thank you, Supervisor Botello. Just want to write this opportunity to give the staff and the rest of the board members thank you. I know I already talked about it, but I want to say it again. Thank you. We generated over $900 that actually going to worthwhile nonprofits. One of them is FFA for that particular county. I also, last night I read some information that the governor's actually redirecting road dollars that are supposed to go to San Benito County somewhere else. So I'm going to ask Ray, I'm going to take my time right now, Mr. Chair, and ask Ray, is that accurate? Or because we had a meeting at RCRC with one of the transportation guys, and he was telling us that that thing was not true, was not moving forward. But last night, I just read somewhere that it is true. Can you elaborate and use my time for you to respond?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, if I may, I believe the concerns that we've all had, I think Supervisor Gilio probably can elaborate further. He's been discussing, I believe it was SB 277, I believe it was at the time. The concerns with that of kind of addressing the methodology on SB 1. I know we met with RCRC and their director. I don't think he was fully aware up on it. He did actually come back to us after, or come back to me after stating that there is some legislative push, that there will be some changes, or at least it's on the horizon, and we're keeping up to date on that. So I think definitely there most likely will be some changes with that.
So there will be changes. So I guess, and I'll just wrap it up, Mr. Chair, is that City Council Member Marty Richmond was correct, and he said that all we're doing is the state of California is taking us for fools, and actually, this is about to happen to us. Unfortunately, he was correct. How sad. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Hernandez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I attended with Supervisor De La Cruz and our CAO, Ray Espinoza, RCRC conference in Lake Tahoe. I learned a lot. I'll try to summarize, but basically I sat through different sessions. One of the sessions that was of interest, I thought, was through the economic development. One of the speakers was Fiona Ma, the state treasurer, and she actually, after I pulled her aside after the meeting and I asked for her contact information, and we talked a little bit about what she could do to help San Benito County to ultimately infuse investment dollars through opportunity zones. And then there's also funding out there, especially since we're in San Benito County, the earthquake capital of the world. One of the things she mentioned was seismic upgrades, funding, which could be a support to buildings like the downtown, which anytime you try to start a business and you're thinking about maybe retrofitting a wall or tearing out a wall to put in a hood or something, you're dealing with what you might have thought a $20,000, $30,000 expense ends up being over $100,000 because of the need for retrofitting seismic protections. So that was really encouraging, and I thought to bring that back. I know that would actually support more Supervisor De La Cruz's district since he's in the downtown, but I think it would be good as a whole, obviously, to support our community and the economic development aspect. So we also, like Supervisor De La Cruz mentioned, we sat down with a lobbyist from RCRC who's looking to express support for our issues with dealing with the roundabout. The roundabout is definitely of concern. A lot of folks. There was obviously a letter from the county and the city supporting trying to change that focus, and instead of having a roundabout, maybe using those dollars to actually help fix our 25 and even just having a focus on an expressway instead of a highway instead of an expressway, which the expressway Caltrans version would be a lot more expensive. So so that was a really productive conversation. We're hoping that he can go to bat for us to support us. And the last thing I just wanted to share was we had a pretty productive Vets Commission meeting yesterday, and we focused on moving some dollars forward to support the CIP dollars, safety elements of that park, and at least start with like a phase 1 element, and that's addressing lighting, maybe some patchwork, and the sewer and potable water issues that we have at that park. And then, hopefully we're also moving forward to vetting, at least getting a quote and seeing what it would take to get a master park plan for that park. So that's all I have to report, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bertello?
Yes, thank you. I have two things. First, it was I had a correspondence from a person on an issue with odors on hemp in one of the areas. We received an email, the full board received an email from the Ag Commissioner quantifying the growing areas of hemp and where we've had some complaints and where we have not had complaints. And I think it's something that we should take a look at the end of the growing season and evaluate our ordinance and make sure that, if there are complaints, that it's on some sort of record that and consideration, and if it's reasonable, especially in areas of residential areas. If there's one house out there in the middle of San Juan Valley, that's different than, say, Comstock development and things like that. So it's something that I wanted to bring for the record. I thought that person might show up today and make a comment on, and I promised her that I would make a comment if she wasn't able to attend. Second, it's been really a privilege for me to be on this board for these years, and especially our efforts as a group to make sure that we promote economic development. I'm really pleased that Supervisor Hernandez is very committed to that, and as he spoke very well a few minutes ago, and Supervisor Gilio hooked me up on a meeting with a local company with our staff, our RMA director and our CAO, with a company that's interested in expanding in my district. Instead of moving, they're going to expand and provide even more jobs. And local jobs are so important for so many reasons. Those folks that work in the private sector locally and live in this community are, truly have the opportunity to contribute more than the poor folks that have to commute to an hour and a half, 2 hours in each direction every single day. And, it's always been our goal, Supervisor De La Cruz, myself, and past board members to try to enhance economics, job creation in our community for that reason, and the reason that it generates tax revenue locally. And there are so many services that we're just barely getting by, and enhancements to our community that we really do need to make, and we can't do it unless we have some economic development. And we started this years ago with a revision of the general plan. It took us a long time to get through that. And we had a lot of community meetings, surveys, community input, stakeholder and community member committee meetings that brought it to open session meetings to Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, and came out with a general plan that really protects our way of life, but yet provides and opportunities that we'd like to see in the future. And our commitment has been, even as recently with this board, to the Economic Development Council to recruit and retain businesses, which is a big commitment on our part, I think. And as that grows, we'll be able to hire the people that the RMA staff needs, department needs, so we could do the mowing along the roads that needs to get done for the safety of our communities, and the parks that Supervisor De La Cruz and Hernandez are working on with the city here, and it's an enhancement for everyone. I'm somewhat concerned and disappointed in the fact that what the area on the 101 corridor, which I value and treasure personally, is such a controversy in this community right now, with a handful of people that are very misguided and putting out falsehoods to get signatures to run a referendum against a zoning ordinance that really puts the constraints of growth in that corridor. And it's one thing to represent what they're doing accurately, that they oppose a zoning ordinance that limits growth and puts standards in place for an application to move forward, and that's not happening. They're telling vicious lies to the public to get a signature and misinformation, and it's a big problem. And this is a cost the county a lot of money. And we want the public to be involved in projects. We want to have responsible commercial development to create tax dollars to provide the services and the jobs locally. But they're going about it the wrong way. And it's disappointing to me. I'm concerned about, our ability to attract businesses and in that 101 corridor or throughout the rest of the county if this thing goes through. Also, if we can, I don't see Joe Paul here, but if we can at the next meeting have an estimate as far as what the cost is to the taxpayers by having this referendum on the ballot. And we need to know that. I think the public deserves to know it. And so I'm going to continue to fight for what's right for San Diego County and put the truth out there, and that's it. And that's the way I'm going to be. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for my extended
No problem. Supervisor Gillia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I'll spare you guys all the details. You probably see me out there. The fair, I just wanted to comment on the fair and give specifically Derek Bias some credit and the entire fair board and the community out there did just an amazing job. One Saturday night, I went back out late in the afternoon after being out there all day, and Dara was actually in the back of the fair parking cars herself as a director out there, so I was pretty impressed. The turnout was pretty amazing, and it was great to see that community event well attended. Supervisor Dela Cruz, your question regarding the funding from SB1, there's a few things going on. One is SB 277. You guys have heard me mention it probably at every single meeting that I'm at. I scream it from the rooftop everywhere I go. I just checked with Director Gilbert this morning, and SB 277 still has not been signed by the governor, but we anticipate that it will be. And again, what that does is it reallocates the way SB1 funds are allocated, essentially. 85% of the funding, if signed, would go to the the larger counties, essentially, that have more road mileage and more people, commonly known as a formula-based system, and then 15% would be competitive, where now it's 50-50. And the competitive benefits small counties more. So essentially, the big counties would probably see a higher amount of funds headed to their projects. So that's very concerning for us, something that I've personally been lobbying against. Our Central Coast Coalition was a little divided on it because we have some larger counties in there, but also we made it very clear to folks that were concerned about this. And honestly, it was probably going to go to 100%. Formulaic, and I think because of some of the lobbying, perhaps it went to 85-15, which is not great, but it's better than nothing, so to speak. And then the next thing that just happened very recently is an executive order N1919, and that was signed by Governor Newsom in the last week or so. And what I would encourage you to do is, or the community to do, is read it, because I think there's a lot of perhaps misinformation going on. We actually talked yesterday to Robert Rivas's staff and him, the assembly member himself, about this to get their opinion of what this executive order meant. And I have the information. I'll send it over to Ray, and perhaps Ray, if it's appropriate to do, you can send it to the full board so they can read it and take a look at it. But there is some changes. It doesn't specifically take a specific dollar amount and say we're going to spend it over here and do something different. It talks about maximizing, the minimization of greenhouse gases, road trips, miles, all these different things. So I think there could be a correlation to public transportation and that sort of thing, but I would encourage everybody to just take a look and read it. Again, that was just signed by the governor, I think, within the last 4 or 5 days. So that's a quick update on that, and I'll leave it at that for the interest of time. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, bring it back to the board for our consent agenda. As Ray stated earlier, we will be removing number 3 and bringing it back to the board on October 22nd. Does anyone from the board wish to pull any items?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull number 9 and number 12.
Number 9, dealing with the cleaning service, and number 12, dealing with the change of, the contract change for $250,000. Any additional? Any from the? I have nothing from the public. And I would like to pull 11, just for a clarification or a. Okay, so we'll start off with.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as amended?
Sure.
Without those items? Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Harry?
Yeah, Harry? When I was reading the backup information, this company is from Gilroy. And actually, I brought this up a while back, a couple years ago, too. You know, is there any local companies that can actually do the maintenance services for the county?
In the case of this contract, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we were just adding services to what we have. We didn't go out to additional bids. I think when this contract is up, we certainly will do that and look for local. We always look for local when we can, but this is an enhancement asked for by the library because they've been having a lot of problems with cleaning, and since we have the service, we're just adding.
So the current contract ends in 3 years,
I believe
right?
it does. Yeah, whatever we have here, yes, sir.
Okay, so then I guess we have to bring it back in 3 years to talk about
Yes,
that.
sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what he's trying to do about the library. Okay,
Is there a motion on the floor?
thank you. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm not sure if the public.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is there any public comment? Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.
We'll bring it back to the board. The motion was made by Jaime, second by Supervisor Gilio. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Just before I go to number 11, Mr. Chair, Ray, can you put a note somewhere in 2 years to revisit this? We have a tendency to forget things. Thank you. Mr. Chair, on number 11?
Yes, number 11.
Yes.
I just brought number 11 up, Simp State.
The source of funding for this is going to be the state. It is through the MHSA funding program received by behavioral health. They are state income taxes for mental health services.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was going to pull it too. So they have enough money now to move forward with this project?
We do.
Yes.
We do, so yes.
They had, what we were talking about several months ago was, I think, double. We were talking about 15 million at one time. They went back and sharpened the pencil and I think decreased their footprint. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. And then the dollars went down, of course. That's what I think you're referring to.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may too, just elaborate. One of the things that we looked at was their reserves, and they have healthy reserves, and they've always had a certain level of reserves. But one of the thoughts is to actually utilize some more of those reserves for servicing of the actual building. So they were able to go ahead and move forward with that based on that. And we can have our accountant also come in and probably elaborate a little more on this, or our budget officer.
Good morning, Board. The behavioral health actually has built up a considerable amount of funding just for a capital improvement project. I believe it is about $3.5 million right now. We are currently working with KNN, who we went out to finance and did the COP for the jail project back at the beginning of this year. We are taking the same steps to also finance. The financing we're estimating is going to be about $10.5 million. And we are going to be bringing an additional staff report at that time. Behavioral health is helping me out with a forecast and estimate of their MHSA dollars and how they're going to be paying that debt servicing back over the life of the loan.
Thank you.
So if the state of California cuts their funding, what's the backup?
That would be the general
General
fund.
fund.
So, Mr. Chair, I read in this report that we're going to have a staff report at the next meeting, or is it the following meeting? As far as some detailed information.
Yeah, we can have that at the next meeting. With
Yeah,
behavioral
because
health. help.
I'm a little concerned about we've been working on this for quite some time, and the estimates for the capital improvement was probably twice as much as what we had, and to finance it, and then I just want to understand the risk to the county's general fund and how long the payment period is that we're looking for the COP, and a little bit more information would be real helpful. But what question I have is what are our deadlines on losing this money? Are we all within the parameters pretty safely right now that it's secured,
So
the state money?
So the $3.5 million that we have will start being reverted back to the state if we do not spend it. The timeline is the end of this year, or is it the following year? I'll have the behavioral health department come up and speak for us. This is Gabe.
Good morning, board. My name is Gabriel. I'm one of the accountants for behavioral health, so I can speak a little bit more about the funding. So this capital tech money that we've been putting away into the capital tech fund, it has been money that had been subject to reversion in the past to go back to the state. But by putting it into this fund, I believe it gives us about 5 years to spend that money. And that money needs to be spent within those 5 years, and that's why we've been accumulating into this fund the last, I believe, 3 or 4 years that we've been putting money away into the fund in order to spend it. And now that everything's been moving along forward with this project, we're going to be using those funds to spend away. And the way that we've been going to be, I guess, financing this the building is that we're going to be able to keep putting money away.
Mm-hmm.
So money that's going to continue to be subject to reversion, we can continue to be putting away money into this fund and put it away to so it's not revertible to the state.
Okay, and we had a pot of money before.
Mhm.
I want to say about 800 or 900,000.
Yeah.
Is that still there?
That we purchased property. That was the plan.
Oh, that
So
purchased
we
the
got
property.
we wanted to get that because that was we definitely had a hard stop on that date. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Very good.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I guess for everybody, what do you believe the risk is to the general fund? I heard some folks mention that, if the state, so to speak, claws back money or stops giving us money, there's a risk to our general fund. I didn't see anything about that mentioned in the staff documents that I went through, so I was wondering if you could address that and talk about that a little bit. What is the risk to our general fund if we move forward with this?
As I understand, the MHSA dollars is the state tax, the 1% tax on millionaires. That would take legislative action to change that that taxation process. In the event that they took that funding away, that's that's one of the largest sources of funding that behavioral health has. Knowing that mental health is a big issue right now, state and nationwide, I think there is a sense of security for that funding and continued funding for mental health programs. That's kind of how we're approaching this. Otherwise, yes, it would be general fund if any of that legislation changed or any of the funding from behavioral health did revert back.
As an additional
Yes, sir.
additional comment. So this money that we get through the MHSA is pooled money that works on a 2-year lag of taxes. So essentially, the money that we're receiving right now through MHSA is money from taxes 2 years ago. So the money that we're going to be receiving next year is from 2 years before then. The money the year before, the year after that, it's 2 years before that we're currently paying into right now for taxes for anyone that's making over $1 million. And from the looks of it, I don't think California is going to stop having millionaires anytime soon. Like Stuart says, this will take legislative action to change the funding and to take it away, since it is one of our biggest funding sources. So I don't think they would be moving forward trying to remove that source of funding from us.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair, I understand how the funding mechanism works, delay triggered. I get it. Unfortunately, we just had a good presentation by Supervisor Gilliard how the California and the governor's taking SB1 formulas to a different direction. And the roads is very important, as important as Prop 61 or 69, I think so. This SB, this $1 million millionaires. So I do, thank you. I do have concerns about that, but that's a bigger issue that I can't even comprehend unless I'm in California at the moment, in Sacramento. The other issue, the dollars that come in, is it specifically just for developing buildings, or is it providing services too?
So the funding that we get for MHSA is broken down into 3 main categories. So community services and prevention and early intervention and innovation plans. So the money that we receive is those main 3 categories. It's split up in a formula that the state gives us, and how we are going to be splitting up into those different categories. And in addition, we have 2 additional funds. We have a WET fund, so it's Workforce Education and Training, and the Capital Tech Facilities Fund that we can use for capital tech needs and then technological needs. The Capital Tech Fund and the WET fund don't get direct funding, but the state allows us to transfer 20% of CSS money into either one of those 2 categories. So we can allocate money from our CSS component, which is the biggest component, into and funnel it into any one of those 2 areas.
And the reason why I raise this question is because I have had a lot of members of the public not happy with the level of services that we're providing to San Benito County residents. For example, a 5150 issue, a 24/7 treatment services. Just we don't provide the same services as other counties, and for whatever reason, is we don't have the money here, but somehow instead of using money for program services to provide services to the public, we're using that money for buildings. So I want to make sure that we're not redirecting money that should be going to services for buildings.
No, this is money that we've put aside. First, we try to fund any kind of services or programs that we're funding, and then beyond that, that's money that we're putting away towards the building.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one comment. So just, historically, when you look at MH funding and the history of it, it's been increasing. And there's going to be probably more, there is definitely more folks looking at it at NACO. We've been having meetings there, and they've been really wanting to put more resources financially to mental health services, and as well as the state. So we see that there's an increase there of funding for these services. The other thing to consider, I wanted the board to be aware, is that we're in a lease, behavioral health and health and human services is in a lease at that building. Up and the current amount of money that is being paid ends in 2023, if I recall correctly, which means that they're moving to another building, which they're still receiving funds to pay more or less for that building through the state and federal funding. So there's funding there. What it means is that we have the ability now to basically put other offices, if we need to, in that space for basically $1 a year. So this is a pretty big deal for the county. I think financially, we can definitely utilize that location at a more, at obviously more economical price. So I think it's really advantageous for us to move forward with this. And I think also too, having all of the services under one umbrella, I think is also important, because right now you have the Esperanza Center, you're all kind of all over the place in the county, so having it under one umbrella, I think, is also important for the community and the residents needing that assistance. And it's close to Health and Human Services and the Homeless Service Center.
Bring it back to the board. Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one correction. The contract amount in the board report is the correct amount of $7,397,000. The cover has a slightly different, smaller number. I'd just like to correct that for the record to be consistent with the contract.
Yeah, it shows 7373, so
Right.
7397 is correct. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a note, because this is a budget adjustment item and requires a 4/5 vote.
Yes.
Just a heads up.
Thank you. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. What's the wish of the board?
I'll move that we take staff's recommendation listed 1 through 6 with the budget correction noted by Director Mavrogenis to approve this item.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jaime?
No.
We have 4 yeas, 1 nay. Passes. We'll move on to number 12. That was a question by Supervisor Jaime De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Harry, I'll get straight to the point. There's been, on social media, people not happy with the way the work we're doing, patching up potholes and all that. Has that been addressed? Is that taken care of?
Well, we are addressing it. We will be addressing it later on in the agenda, sir.
Perfect.
The potholes are not an improvement necessarily in the road surface. They're safety. We're filling the big, giant potholes now that can cause accidents, and they're not always going to be smooth based on the road surface.
Okay, yeah.
And particularly Fairview Road has been a problem. But overall, they've done a very good job of patching, and we're working now on Pinoche, and soon we'll be back up on Salinas Grade to finish this safety work.
Okay, I have nothing on this one, Mr. Chair. It's just, this was an opportunity for me to ask that question, that's all.
Was the, any public comment?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Seeing that that is the consent, we'll go into our public hearing. We're going to conduct a public hearing to consider the Planning Commission recommendation and adoption of an ordinance to amend zoning map for assessors parcel 020-280-054, a 4-acre parcel located 1/4 mile west of South Side Road, Enterprise Road intersection near Hollister, unincorporated, San Benito County, from agriculture to single-family residential.
Good morning, Michael Kelly, Associate Planner, here to talk about the zone change proposal on this assessor's parcel at this location, which is south of Hollister, down Southside Road, just past the intersection with Enterprise Road, at the northwest corner of what is now constructed or almost is under construction as Sunnyside Estates. The development that the Planning Commission and Board approved in about, I think, 2016. This property is out, if you go out from Southside Road along Fulton Way or Mojave Way, you get to the project site where it's proposed to have and was approved by the Planning Commission to have these 10 residential lots here, along with the extensions to Mojave Way and a connecting loop road leading to Fulton Way, and also this Sunny Slope County Water District easement that would turn into a lot for the same purpose. As I said, this was all approved by the Planning Commission by its resolution in on August 21st, and it was on the condition that this be rezoned from agricultural productive, which it is right now, to single-family residential zoning. You'll see that single-family residential zoning is already present in the area. all through the Sunnyside Estates site, and also over here in Bennett Ranch property subdivision, and the other lands here. That actually this site has been under single-family residential zoning for several years now, but Sunnyside Estates is newer, and this would be proposed to be, or this is proposed to be the same as just what's next to it, and effectively just an extension of what you see right here in Sunnyside Estates onto a part of this 4-acre property. Right now over here, this is rural residential zoning, 1-acre lots, some limited agriculture, and over here on this property and across the river, it's agricultural productive, less limited agriculture, and 5-acre minimum zoning. And this would all be in the context of the residential mixed general plan land use district, which extends from the south part of Worcester over toward Ridgemark, residential mixed, generally allowing the kind of land use that you see in the single-family residential zoning district and also other residential types. If you go to the site now, you'll, of course, will see the construction of Sunnyside Estates happening. With this is the intersection of Fulton Way and Sacramento Way, and the streets and utilities run right up to the project site here, with the construction of Sunnyside Estates on either side, and this just as you see it right here. And here you're looking down Mojave Way with the existing construction. It's actually more constructed now because this photo was taken in August. And the project site right here. And this was reviewed under the California Environmental Quality Act. The result was the negative declaration, which found that there would be no significant environmental impacts, no impacts requiring any mitigation, provided that the conditions of approval that are found in the Planning Commission resolution are followed. Conditions that, several of which address environmental issues, and in staff's mind, and in staff's mind, sufficiently address the environmental concerns of the site. There was not public comment that asked for more, and so this was circulated, open for public comment, and brought to the Planning Commission as part of its consideration, and in the resolution that they adopted include findings for the purpose of CEQA. And the project was, as I said, approved on the condition of the rezoning on this property. So thank you. So staff recommends that the board review the materials, hold this public hearing, hear proponents and opponents of the project, and make a motion to accept the introduction of the ordinance, waive first reading, and adopt the ordinance attached to your packet materials, including the findings regarding CEQA and consistency with the general plan to enact the single-family residential zoning on this site. I can answer questions if you have any questions.
Mr. Chair?
Then we go to public comment first, is that all right?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Is there any public comment? Thank you.
No problem.
Hello, Board of Supervisors. My name is Ann Hall. I'm with San Benito Engineering, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant today. The applicant is also here if you have questions of him. But as Michael went through this tentative map, went to Planning Commission in August. One of the conditions is that it come before you for a rezone. The property was under the general plan, ag property, up until the latest general plan. Under the general plan, it was redesignated as RM, as he said. So this zoning is just bringing the property in line with the general plan. And It's been a long road. This was obviously originally conceived as part of the, sort of an extension of the Sunnyside Estates. It's been in the works since about 2014. We're really glad to be here today to finally get to complete this and move forward. It unfortunately, I think, got caught up with some of the changes going on in over the past few years with personnel. It didn't quite follow along quite as quickly as Sunnyside Estates, but we're here, and this is great, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Supervisor Gilio.
I just wanted to make a couple comments, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this today, and I'll tell you why. I think our staff and our planning commission did a good job. If you look in your packet, you'll also see a tentative map that was approved by the planning commission, and some of the things that it takes care of are things that we've all talked about and that we're concerned about. The park in lieu of fee is in there, ag mitigation, acre for acre, or an in lieu of fee. CFD will be in place for these 10 units that matches the existing CFD for Sunnyside Estates. And in all honesty, if you actually go out there to the site, the development of Sunnyside Estates makes this 5 acres to continue to try to use it as productive ag land would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, with the way that it's surrounded by these houses. So for those reasons, I'm going to support this today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I got a question. I'm reading the language of the conditions, and I do see some in lieu of fees for the habitat conservation plan impact fees and all the other stuff, but I don't see anything about low-income housing component. Is that something we skipped on this project?
This project was considered a complete submittal in 2016 prior to the adoption of the current affordable housing regulations.
Okay, so what was in place in 2016?
In 2016, it was a voluntary system. It was all derived from the state law that said that if you voluntarily provide lower income housing, you get certain concessions if you are a developer.
These are going to be low-income housings at these 10 houses?
No. This is, if that was the rule at the time, that if a developer were to provide that type of housing in a development, then it would get certain concessions. A density bonus is the main concession, but there are other concessions that would have been granted. But as for requirements, that wasn't set in county law at the time in mid-2016 when this was considered a complete submittal. And the completeness date, the date at which an application is considered a complete submittal, is a determining date for things like this, as I understand it.
Because I recall that the board, we all were in consensus, in agreement that we were not going to allow any other project until we have some type of affordable component in place first. Is there any projects out there that might skip that mission statement?
New projects would be subject to the current affordable housing regulations.
But we don't have anything in place right now. I mean, all we have really is at the discretion of the board of supervisors.
Are you talking about the fee part, or are you talking about, okay. The current rules do have inclusionary housing for construction, but for the fee, that's a different matter. But this being considered a complete submittal prior to the date of the adoption of that ordinance, as I understand it, it wouldn't be subject to this ordinance.
Okay.
Are there any further questions from the board? Seeing none, what's the wish of the board?
I move that do you need a detailed motion on this one because of the public hearing, county attorney?
I think per staff recommendation.
Okay, I move we approve per staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
3-2. Passes. Move on. That closes our public hearing. Go on to our regular agenda. Looking at number 15, Resource Management Agency, dealing with roads and more roads.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's my pleasure to present this to you. This is basically what we call a quick start program, working with the Measure G funds. We are going to be receiving approximately $1.8 million a year from the local share of Measure G funds. And what we have before you is a way to essentially prioritize the projects, get something moving as quickly as we can. We will be probably looking at some sort of short-term financing based on the revenues from Measure G to move the projects as far forward ahead as we can. I believe we've covered most of the major roads that are in the worst condition right now, and this will be an overlay. This is not just pothole repairs. This is structural work down to the base, and would significantly improve the condition of some of these major roads. We believe that the $8 million will cover what we have here, and we also are showing an additional $3 million from the enterprise fund that would tie to specific improvements with the landfill additional truck traffic. So we have $11 million worth of projects in front of you to move ahead with. We will be bringing these back, obviously, before we do any specific contracts for your further review. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sir.
With regards to any kind of project or moving forward, I kind of wanted to give the board a full kind of overview of our finances prior. So I've asked Stuart Petrie to actually put a spreadsheet together for your board to help you understand kind of where we're at financially with all the different pots of money that we have, if the board so chooses to address a couple of other items, if they do, at least have a real clear understanding of where we stand financially on the with regards to roads and the different pots of money. So, Stuart?
So the sheet that I handed out to the board, that is what is up here. I do want to just highlight something because it's been brought up in discussion today, is the SB1. The second table that outlines potential SB1, you might want to put an asterisk next to that, depending on how SB1, the legislation is changed, if that is changed on that. These are just the estimates with the current allocation that we're receiving, which is about 1.7 million. The first table outlines all of the road projects, including the 2 projects that would be added today with Measure G, and additional local road, what I consider local road projects, which is part of the enterprise fund. The local road project item there includes the Best Road project, the John Smith project, the quick pothole project that that the board approved this year, as well as this new $3 million Fairview project. Additionally, I wanted to highlight the highway bridge projects. We have a $60.5 million cost estimate on the 8 bridges. Of that, we have funding secured from the state of about $55.4 million, and we have about a $5.1 million shortfall there.
See if I could,
Go ahead.
Vice Chair, thank you. $5 million on the bridge projects. So how are we to address that out of other road funds that is, we probably should be using for pavement? Because a lot of these projects was recommended by Caltrans and FEMA and all this, and some of the bridges that, quite frankly, I wouldn't even be worried about. Just leave them as they are, and maybe find the cutbacks through that method rather than taking monies that we should throw on pavement on well-traveled roads.
I think the issue, Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, so I think the issue with that is that we're kind of all in. Some time back, we started this process. If we don't finish the process, we're going to have to pay back for those bridges. Probably probably a little bit more than what's on the table. So we might as well get the bridges, pay what's there, and move forward with it. So that's why we're all in at this point. Again, the bridge projects started
It's
a while ago.
disaster, in my mind, long before. And, we should have had some of these bridges done quite a while ago. And, now we're kind of chasing, the costs, and now it's coming out of, fundings that we should be using for, for our roads. It's just, so we have exhausted working with Caltrans that, perhaps, I'm going to use one example. I think we did take that bridge off Rocks Road. That bridge is not move forward. Or we found a way to work with the Aromas Water District that
I think we have the car bridge in now, but.
the car bridge is that needs to be done because there's a hole in it.
I think Rock.
And
I've got Greg here, and he knows other bridges pretty well.
but if we could cut Anzar Road Bridge, and save the money, it's that bridge is functionable.
Yeah, there was one bridge I'm aware that was removed from the list. It was a low water, I can't remember which road.
It was, I think, a Bettable Y bridge.
Right. And
Yeah.
currently, we are going to construction with the first bridge project, the guardrails at Shore and San Felipe. We will be going on October 22nd to get authorization to bid the hospital bridge. And then we are focusing now on the rest of those bridge locations. I would comment that in the program that you have time to sort out, the balance of the funds for the shortfall, because it'll take, 2-3 years to pull together and move forward with all the locations. We are looking at the other jobs.
Mm-hmm.
We're fortunate in that most of the bridges are eligible for state
100%.
toll funds.
Yeah.
So the real shortfall is going to come with the largest bridges like the Union Road Bridge. That's the bulk of the nut that we have to crack. So I think, as Greg stated, I think we have time over the next several years because that bridge isn't programmed until 21, 22 for start. So I think we have time to find the resources to make that one happen.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
very important bridge, and cobbling together other funds. We're looking at other funds now through some of the development that's happening to help improve Union, and we may be able to solve some of that in that manner.
Yeah, and
I'm pretty confident we can handle that one.
I know you'll get it, and I have confidence in our staff to make this all work. I just want to express the concern that if we have Measure G funds, it's supposed to go pavement and SB1 funds, and perhaps if we have this shortfall on the bridges, I heard Supervisor De La Cruz, I heard Supervisor Hernandez hesitant for additional growth. And can we incorporate some of the, projected shortfall into the impact fee type of revenue stream? And it, perhaps
I
that
believe
will
we can,
help us with the
because
$5 million.
Some of that improvement is going to be reconstructing two significant intersections, and those are off the bridge itself. So
Right.
the curve is being moved. So there's a lot of work that is non-bridge work that's related that I'm sure we could
Yeah.
find additional sources to make that happen.
Yeah.
Very important bridge for us, and we need to make sure that it happens.
Mr. Chair, if I may add too, just for clarity, because I think you brought up a good point, Supervisor Patella, is that this is not Measure G money that we're looking at. If you look up on the chart up on the top, it does say RSTP COG. There's some funds there. We're just marking that. We want you to see what the dollar figures are and have a good understanding. whether we use it that or not, or we find some other funding somewhere else through impacts or whatever, we will do that. But we just wanted to make sure that you understood how big of a gap we have on these bridges. But I think, like as our RMA director mentioned, I think we can get there. We still have some time, and we're still working through some of the impact fees and our obligations on 156. The other obligations that we have, we need to make sure we're cognizant of that, and also to what we can use those funds for, and having the nexus as RMA director just mentioned. Yeah.
Thank you. Supervisor Gilio.
Yeah, I just want to thank our team for putting this together. Amazing to have everything on one page and be able to actually do some thinking ahead as opposed to just kind of fixing emergencies. So I really appreciate that. One of the things, and Supervisor Patella took the words out of my mouth. If you look at Traffic Impact Fee Fund, $7.4 million, that doesn't come without development. Whether we like development or not, these are how these things are paid for, and I fully 100% support making up. I see where you guys made up the RST with the bridge project, about 1.9 with the RSTP money, and probably you combine the TDA in there. I'm not 100% sure, but I would explore seeing if we can use impact fee money for that. We have all these projects coming in. We just talked about 10 more houses out there, and 200 already there. That should be paying for that bridge. I mean, it's expansion, it's new population. Why shouldn't impact fees be able to pay for that? So I would really encourage us to look at that. And one thing that came to mind is I actually met with Director Mavrogenes talking about that bridge, and it's not just a bridge. Don't imagine just they're going to go out there and like Wile E. Coyote with dynamite and blow up the bridge and put in a new one. That's not what's happening. It's a whole new curve correction. It starts way back towards Southside Road, corrects that whole curve, cleans everything up. It's really a huge improvement to that whole flow of traffic there. That corner is unsafe. It improves the intersection at San Benito Street. It's a big deal. So, just when you see bridge, don't just think, the little piece of the bridge. And I'm sure that's the case for all of the bridges. There's areas around them that are also improved. I think it's really critical that we get this done before prices go up even more and we end up paying more. There's an opportunity and a timing cost to money, and the longer we wait or delay things, I think that could be dangerous. So I appreciate that. And as far as looking at the projects that you have suggested on the agenda here, they're definitely all, and these are specifically related to Measure G, they're definitely all called out. She brought out the Measure G priority projects list for the county. They're all on there. I appreciate that we're doing those. The only thing that I want to make sure as a team, we're considering the thoroughfare roads, and that we lump all this money together in the best possible ability we can with the enterprise fund. I notice on here we have 1.5 in for the John Smith realignment. We have talked about that. I mean, I've only been here 6 months. You guys have been talking about it for probably 30 years. You're probably all pretty frustrated about talking about that. We need to either decide, are we going to move forward with this John Smith realignment? Are we not going to move forward with the John Smith realignment? And then what can we do with those funds? Can we make just the intersection a little bit better so trucks can get around the corner without having to worry about the environmental? Because we've heard, or I've heard, that this could take 5-7 more years to get the environmental taken care of, and several $1 million. So I would just caution us to not reserve too much money for that if we can use it, and we know that that's going to be super far out, and we also have the money allocated in the new landfill agreement to consider for that. And I'd really like to consider doing as much as we can do, because I think it's very appropriate to use enterprise funds for Fairview Road, obviously, probably perhaps even McCloskey Road. And I'd really like to just cobble together as much as we can to do the biggest project we can and get the most bang for our buck. And I think this helps us, the budget sheet that I'm holding up, helps us look at the future and see what monies are available. And honestly, as far as road repairs go, the future is bright. And then I wanted to make one last comment regarding the potholing. It's been a major concern in our community. I appreciate the chair addressing that in the social media platforms. I'm very hopeful that our county can get a social media page going and advertise what we're doing, because that's what I'll speak for myself as a board member, and I'll take the responsibility. That's exactly what I wanted to have done out there, was emergency patchwork. We weren't repairing the roads. We're getting ready for winter. If we have another wet winter, our roads were in such a bad condition that, frankly, they're getting to the point where they're impassable. And these patches allow us to at least get through the winter until we can start these lists of projects that we have here in the springtime, because we can't do road construction in the winter. So I wanted to make that clear, and I think we need to do a better job, I'll say for myself, of maybe perhaps communicating with the public about what we're actually doing. These aren't overlays. It wasn't a contractor doing shoddy work or our county crews doing shoddy work. They're doing exactly what we asked them to do, which was patching the holes in an emergency manner. And thank you for the time, Mr. Chair, and sorry for being so lengthy.
No problem.
Mr. Chair, I just want, on the note of what Supervisor Gilliu had mentioned, I wanted to have a little bit of a supporting statement. I and our CAO and Lauren have been working on just that, on trying to come up with a platform that ultimately gets the public educated, or at least to have a better understanding of what we are working on. And it's not particular to necessarily any district, so it's not biased. The focus is really just addressing concerns and issues, and really just having a conduit for conversation.
Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I got to commend staff for this, and thank you, Ray. This is a good report, and I echo Supervisor Gilliu's comments on it. I think we need to take it one step further, just the way Supervisor Hernandez said it. If this thing gets approved today, we need to put something on social media, Ray, starting today, and explain exactly what Supervisor Gilliu said, that it was more of an emergency patch. It was not to solve the problem. We understand the public is frustrated with it. We apologize, but this was the intent, and this is what we're doing. So we got to work on this, like, as soon as we're done, Ray, and put it out there.
Okay. The question I have is similar to Supervisor Gilliu's. I would like to formally do something about this John Smith realignment. I mean, I'm sorry, 10 years is it's just too long. So either we continue or we scratch it. And, Ray and I had a pretty heated conversation about a week ago about the money we have in this enterprise zone. So we have money that's sitting here, and I have residents, we all have residents that use Fairview and Shore and McCloskey. I want to drain that money and spend it on these roads where it belongs. And, we need to make a decision. We can't kick the can down the road and say, well, let's look at it. This is money that was intended for road repairs. It wasn't intended for anything else. So what do I have to do in order to get this money on Fairview immediately? CAO Espinoza.
So what I would recommend doing is us giving direction to staff. We'll come back at our next board meeting with a staff report, if your board so chooses, to redirect those enterprise funds to the Thoroughway, Fairview Road, John Smith Road. It's more or less, most of it's done, if your board so chooses. I think the essence, and Supervisor Jaime De La Cruz and Supervisor Batella probably can discuss this a little bit. I think that we had an RRP park that I think the board, past board, was really looking at doing something with that and potential investment in that. I think the landfill utilizing methane gas and kind of investing in something there as well. But obviously, as per our conversation, the importance right now, I think, in front of us is the roads. And so if your board so chooses, we definitely could do that. Just come back to your board with that, with an actionable item.
Okay. Supervisor Patello, I know you were involved in the realignment process along with the recycle.
Yeah, I'm completely disenchanted with the realignment efforts. I think we are going to spend a lot of money and time and just to try to figure out what to do with a feral pond salamander, and it's ridiculous, but and it's really a shame that public safety comes second to a feral pond. For the life of me, I'll never understand it. but that's the world that we live in. And we have roads, and I appreciate this list. I think it's very well put together. As Supervisor Gilio noted, a lot of it's Measure G roads, but I'm also concerned about a few of the other roads that pavement deterioration is occurring. If we could utilize enterprise funds to repair the impacts on Fairview and Shore, utilize those funds for that, and we also should really put on high priority McCloskey, because we want to, as we talked about, realign those trucks onto McCloskey. Well, you can't do that within the condition of that road right now, and Wright Road. And I think we need to look at future funding sources that we have coming in, like the business license is significant. It's $500,000 to $800,000 is generated just from mineral depletion. That money should go and be diverted to the roads that those gravel trucks are using. That could be kind of a source to Union Road. And then what monies we have on Union Road, San Justo Road is a thoroughfare now. And the road is in my district, but it's servicing the people that are going home to Supervisor Hernandez's district, Supervisor De La Cruz's district, and Supervisor Medina's district. And
Not mine, though.
Not yours, you work there. But, it's something needs to be done there. I mean, in a short-term future, otherwise we're gonna lose that road. And we just ground up Hudner Lane. And I don't know if that grinding up San Justo is a good idea. But, we really have to start utilizing, I appreciate the chairs wanting to, drain every dime that we could get out of the enterprise fund and put it to the roads and fix them now. We probably have to keep a little bit there, but we also have to look at some of these other sources of funding as well. But keep in mind, we have an obligation to our county employees too, to have some salaries with some of these other sources of income. Thank you.
But just for the record, the enterprise zone cannot be used for anything with the exception of roads or anything that is dealing with the landfill.
Impact, yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
the landfill.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure we
Mr. Chair,
all
can I make
understand.
one more point? I forgot. I'm
Yes.
sorry. In my long-winded speech there, I lost my train of thought. The other one that I would like to have a report back to the board on is the Cienega Road realignment. So that was something new to me about a month ago. I learned about, and I asked a bunch of questions about it, and I think we all need some clarity because I think there's been some staff changes, and I think this was from a long time ago, and we need to learn what the source of that funding was. Number one, what would be the timing to do a Cienega Road realignment, because there's nearly $1 million in there, $850,000. And what would the actual cost be? Is it, a $30 million project? Is it a $5 million project? Is it $1 million project? And is it realistic? And if it's not, same thing with John Smith Road. Let's not keep talking about these things that I believe may be unrealistic. Now, if you guys come back and as a board, maybe, and especially Anthony and Jaime, maybe you guys have some history and understand this better and can provide some clarity on it. But if that's the case, then let's use it to improve the road. You know how we, at this table, I think at the dais here, Supervisor De La Cruz mentioned it today, the state and, not helping out San Benito County and these different things. Well, I can tell you that when I spent a lot of time on Cienega Road, there's several wineries out there, a lot of businesses, there's a lot of residential stuff out there, the state park, and I can tell you, they look at me and they say, "Are you crazy? Why are you going to spend all this money trying to realign a road when you should just repave the one that's there?" It's kind of like what we all feel with Caltrans sometimes. They feel that with us. And that's why I need to really understand. Well, and if it's a great idea, then let's get the information out to the community and share that with them. And if it's maybe not the great idea, or it was back in the day and we never came up with the funds, then let's just be transparent and and let everybody know. And then we can make a decision at this board to move forward with just repairing the road, or yes, let's keep doing the realignment thing. But I'd really like to get some clarity on that, because as we're moving forward, that's a big chunk of change that'll do about a mile of that road, which is in desperate need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only comment is just a big thank you for this list. It's pretty extensive, and I was actually thinking about, and I obviously grazed over it, I hadn't saw it, but even though it's not in my district, it's in Supervisor Medina's district, I drive through there a lot. And the Fairview Road, Fallon Road traffic signal, I think that's super duper important. I kind of cringed when I heard the report when it basically was said not enough people have died on that road for it to be a focus. I think that's a really negative statement. Prevention is always the best remedy in my mind. So anyways, all things considered, especially with the road projects and the realignment conversation that we just had, I think it's really extensive, and it's going to be a very felt impact to our community, and I thank you guys for doing this. This is awesome.
Okay, and then just to close this, and before public comment is, I'm impatient, we all know that. So are we coming back on the 22nd with information about the enterprise zone and about other road things we will be doing? Or are we all in agreement?
If that's the wish of the board, we will definitely do that. We'll work with RMA, administration will work with RMA on that, and assist in bringing back a staff report.
So what my understanding is that we're going to put an item in the next meeting to discuss enterprise phone and then John Smith realignment. Is that correct?
Cienega Road realignment. So when you look at that list there, there's a $857,000, that pot of money, as well as the enterprise fund. And we'll have an actionable item to reallocate those funds for either the throwaway for the trucks that we discussed, which would be Fairview, Shore, McCloskey, as well as addressing the Cienega Road realignment and just using that fund to actually repave Cienega Road up the hill.
Okay. And I do share with Supervisor Batalo's his concerns about John Smith extension, because I too, the delayed was just, it was becoming to be another hospital bridge road issue where it's just been on the books for 30 years.
Yes,
We don't want to have that same situation here. Okay, thank you.
So we're pretty clear, everyone? Okay. Public comment? Mr. Wayne Norton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, wearing my Aromas Water District Director hat to maybe sort of address the Rocks Road Bridge. My understanding, Supervisor Botello, is that the bridge work is going to go on, but working with RMA staff, we were able to figure out how we wouldn't have to move the water district infrastructure, and so with considerable savings to the district. I believe that was how that came out. I had a question that was in the staff report, and by the way, I want to thank Chairman Medina for, on social media, putting the staff report on social media, because I think it was very helpful to me. But in social media, or in the staff report, I saw a mention of the Carr Avenue Bridge project, and that is in planning. I'd like to have a little bit more information about that, because that bridge probably should have been replaced 25 years ago. And so the quicker that we can get to fixing that bridge, because as the RMA director mentioned, it's got a hole in the middle of it. And it's, when I moved to that community, that was a 2-lane bridge. It's now 1.5 at best lane bridge. It needs to be repaired, and it needs to have a high priority. And I understand that really the only pot of money that you can draw from is, well, two, the general fund or Measure G, and so it doesn't really sort of fit itself nicely into enterprise or maybe even the mineral depletion funding. But it's a priority for our community. That's a major artery. That's the major way that half of our community, especially in the San Benito side, actually gets to and from services, gets to and from home, gets to and from school. If we lose that bridge, we have a very significant issue, including fire trucks. How will the fire trucks get to Carr Avenue? So, you know, I'm sort of asking for sort of an increased concern about getting that bridge fixed. And I know that Supervisor Patello has been working for years and trying to get it up. But I hope that we can raise the priority on that bridge because it is so central to my community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? Bring it back to the board here. Is there a motion on this, or is it just?
Motion to approve as recommended, staff recommendation.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. This brings us to the final regular agenda, the Long-Term Care Commission.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, Chairman Benito. My name is Mitch Matthews. I'm the 2019 Chair of the Aging and Long-Term Care Commission. We're comprised of regional experts and longtime residents of things that are affecting the elder community in San Benito County and our region. We have a voice for San Benito County for advocacy for the senior community, for things of having the housing or lack of affordable housing, as highlighted by Supervisor De La Cruz. We address healthcare issues and access to healthcare issues, food insecurity, elder abuse, and transportation, among other many important things. Our role, excuse me, as a county commission is to report back to you and encourage your support in things for the constituency of your seniors in San Benito County and our region. And today I'm pleased to have Clay Kemp here, the Executive Director of the Senior Council in Santa Cruz and San Benito County, that'll give you an update on what has happened with the state legislator and many of the bills that went forward and how that's going to affect our community and what we as a commission are doing to advocate for the seniors in our community and the betterment of our community. So with that, I'll introduce Clay Kemp.
Thank you, Mitch. Supervisors, good morning. Part of why we wanted to do this was back in March, our update or presentation was about priority bills that we were looking at and priority funding issues. So it's been an amazing year in the California legislature for aging programs. So normally, you know, we probably wouldn't do this presentation or it would be just kind of more bad news that what we tried to do didn't happen. But the handout that you have kind of highlights an update as to, staff says you received the handout as earlier today. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things in there because for once it's actually a successful campaign that several of the members of your own Long-Term Care Commission headed up some of these initiatives. So I wanted to just pull out a couple of highlights. I think the first one is the funding success that we had. Statewide, we brought in another $17.5 million for senior nutrition programs. That will be about 60,000 in San Benito County. So with that, we will be able to eliminate the waiting list that we've had for Meals on Wheels in Santa Cruz County for some time. So that's really a nice thing. I don't think there's anything much more basic than feeding somebody, and especially if we're talking about a frail senior who can't get out of their house. It's really tragic if we have to put someone on a waiting list. So for now, that's gone. So, you know, happy about that. A couple other things, our caregiver resource centers and our long-term care ombudsman also received substantial local boosts or statewide boosts which impact us locally. One thing that we did not get here or did not benefit from is the MSSP program, the Multi-Service Senior Program, which addresses nursing home diversion, was increased statewide, but there was no MSSP program in San Benito County. And that's really a lack of political will. It might be something our committee wants to take on this year. We'd really want a partnership with Board of Supervisors if we're going to do that because it requires leveraging state funds through a federal 1115 waiver process. So while most parts of the state have an MSSP program, rural areas tend to be the areas that are not part of the process. And that really is driven by two things. Political will is obviously the obvious one, but the other is that it's often much more difficult to provide services in a rural community. We're lucky in San Benito County in that Mitch actually works for an agency that provides MSSP in Monterey counties and Santa Cruz County. So to expand the program to serve San Benito County wouldn't be starting from scratch. You wouldn't have to build the infrastructure. You would just have to have the allocation that you're going to help people in this community. So it would be a real easy addition or expansion. Regarding the legislature, there's one correction in the handout that I want to share, and that's SB 611. I neglected to fix this, but 611 actually is to have the master plan on aging, which is Governor Newsom's initiative, have that include a component to address housing for seniors and for people with disabilities. It's not trying to change the general plan process. That was in the bill initially, but we got that changed really through a variety of county organizations and our state association trying to make that a more palatable bill than it started to be. A couple other things that aren't in this report that I do want to share is that there's some funding for a falls prevention program. We're waiting to get the regulations for that. It's a pilot program right now. There's an associated bill which would make permanent funding for it. So we're hoping with this pilot program, at least if the permanent funding doesn't happen, that we can work with local hospitals. I've spoken with Friends of Hazel Hawkins about potentially creating something to provide interventions if somebody has been admitted to the ER but hasn't had a full broken hip, for example, that we could target those individuals for some training or mitigation or home assessments to make sure they're not going to be readmitted. We know they're going to be high risk for falling again, so we want to do what we can do to stop that in advance. Whole thing about prevention being, better than a cure is the philosophy there. I think this holds great potential in terms of just being revenue positive. You wouldn't even have to have a lot of success. If there's 50 people admitted for falls, if you prevent even one of them from falling and breaking a hip again, that's going to more than pay for the cost of this service. So I'm excited about that. And then a couple things that are going to be on our next agenda at the Long-Term Aging and Long-Term Care Commission is we're looking at age-friendly communities and also at Aging and Disability Resource Connections, which is a fancy name for no wrong door. That if somebody looks for services in one agency, they get connected with county services and other community-based organizations. Really kind of not just streamlining the service, but making sure that there's little duplication of services and then those preventive services get to the people that need it. So that's the update. I use the same format as what we presented in March just to be consistent with that if anyone had that handy. But we continue to be active as a commission and through our statewide networks to make sure these services thrive, that there's adequate funding for them, and that there's appropriate structures so those that are in need can really get to what's out there as opposed to wandering around wondering, what can I do? How can I get help? And that's always one of the biggest challenges we face. I know 15 years ago when my mom started to need services, I'm a professional in the field and I didn't know where to get everything. So I think as much as we can do to streamline this, the better. Lastly, I'll just put in there that the governor has appointed a committee to work on a master plan on aging, and I'm really happy and honored that I've one of the 30 people selected to work on that. So hopefully we'll have some great projects coming out in the future to streamline and improve services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Seen
Questions?
questions or public comment? Bring it back to the board.
I just want to take a minute to say thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's amazing that you got assigned to the Governor's Committee. I mean, I think that's going to have a big impact for us here locally, so thank you for taking the time to do that.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Thank you very much, Clay, for all your work. And we do have a great partnership with Santa Cruz County with the area of aging and taking care of our older folks here. And we got to keep doing our part, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's, was informational only. We will go to legal counsel and talk about closed session.
Number 17, closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision D2 and E2 of Government Code Sections 54956.9, number of cases 1, potential of additional litigation regarding the master tax agreement currently being litigated in Ward Homes and BMC Promise Way, and 18, closed session conference with labor negotiators, agency designated representatives, Michael McDougall, Ray Espinoza, Edgar Nolasco, Stuart Patry, Elvia Baroquio, and Barbara Thompson, Employee Organizations, Institutions Association, Law Enforcement Management Employees Group, SEIU Local 521, Deputy Sheriff's Association, confidential management, appointed department heads, unrepresented employees, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6.
Is there any public comment? See none, we'll head to closed session. Oh, I know, it's crazy, huh?